Welcome back to a new episode of Podcast on the Brink. It is Thursday, April 10th. College basketball season officially over. What a great Final Four and national championship game we had. Just a great tournament in general. Before we get to this week's episode with my dad, Rick Bozich of WDRB and WDRB.com, wanted to take a moment to remind you that Podcast on the Brink, as always, brought to you by our friends at Visit Bloomington, who's also a proud partner of Indiana University Athletics. Spring has arrived, and it's a great time to enjoy award-winning wings at Buffalo's, go paddleboarding on Lake Lemon, or experience one of the many great festivals in Bloomington like the Cosmic Songwriter Festival and Grand Falloon. Order your free visitor guide and plan your spring getaway at visitbloomington.com. How'd your bracket do in the tournament this year? I had Houston winning, so I came up just short.
We always have to post one like immediately after the draw comes out, and I'm never really very happy with it because it's so quick. I didn't enter any pools. I should have. I think my Final Four was Auburn beating St. John's. Well, St. John's didn't make it, and it was Alabama beating Houston. So I had two of the four teams, but I didn't have their teams in the championship game.
I was also in a survivor pool that Jay Horry, who graduated from New Albany, his mom was actually my math teacher at New Albany, but he runs this survivor pool every year in the tournament, and I'm always usually out like the first weekend, but this year it was so few upsets that actually me and my brother-in-law both made it to Final Four weekend. The only teams both of us had left were who was on the side with Florida? Was it Auburn? Okay, we had Auburn and Duke left, so both of us picked Auburn, and so they were out. But I think it was the most people that had ever split that pool. But it kind of just speaks to the number of how few upsets there were. It was a great tournament overall, just with the quality of play. I thought later in the second round and going into Final Four weekend. What did you think just in general of the tournament and how it all worked out?
Yeah, it was a really good Final Four. There weren't as many off the wall upsets in the early rounds. I don't know if that's going to be a continuing trend or not. We didn't see some of the crazy stuff we've seen in the past. Didn't seem to be that many super dramatic games or like breakout players. Coaches kind of ruled the whole thing, but it was a good tournament. There's always a letdown after the season's over because there's no games now until November, but it was a good tournament. And the other thing that makes it hard for me to judge is there's so much other stuff going on in college basketball when the tournament's going on that sometimes it's hard to actually focus on the tournament. There's all these coaching changes. There's portal activity. I think sometimes that distracts from the tournament. It's hard to follow it all.
Yeah, I've been thinking about this a little bit. I mean, I don't know that there's a way that they would be able to move the tournament up, because I know that CBS likes to have the Final Four and then the Masters back-to-back weekends. It's like a big thing for them, but I just think the mechanics of the whole thing has become a bit chaotic from the standpoint of, I know they moved back the portal a week this year, but it's still opened, with teams left in the tournament, a ton of teams. And Izzo made some pretty, Izzo's always outspoken, but made some comments about, well, if I lose some ground in the portal, I'm not going to worry about it. I've got to focus on my season. And I mean, I guess in one way it's an advantage for the teams that are out to get a head start on the portal, but the teams that are still in, a disadvantage. Just thinking out loud here, can you think of any way they could change this system to make it more equitable for everybody? Is it moving back to the portal a little bit more and lowering the number of days to enter? I mean, last year it was 45 days, I believe, to enter. This year it's 30. It still seems like that's a pretty long period for guys to be able to enter. I mean, I think you maybe could even cut it down by another week and at least maybe have it open a week later. But the chaos of it all, I agree with you from standpoint of, fan bases. around the country. Once their team loses, they're not so focused on the tournament anymore. They're just focused on the portal and who their teams are going. I know at Indiana that's kind of been the focus now since the end of the season. It's all transfer portal guys entering and who's Indiana going to get from the portal.
Yeah, I mean the problem is that it's such a contrast to professional sports. And professional sports, the NFL Super Bowl ends in February, free agency starts in March. In the NBA, the season ends in June, and free agency starts early July. Baseball, the World Series ends in late October, early November, and then there's most free agents don't start signing somewhere to December. I understand why colleges can't do it that way because of academic years and all that kind of stuff, but it's a distraction to the rest of the tournament, I think. And moving it back another week would probably be helpful. So the only teams that aren't involved are the Final Four teams. But even if they do that, people are still going to be making deals and talking to people behind the scenes. I'm sure that goes on during the season. So
Right.
I don't know. I'm sure a lot of fans don't care about it. To me, it was just sort of, I think it takes away from the tournament because it's always, team loses and the next day 5 guys go in the portal. It's such a whirlwind activity. There's no cohesiveness or continuity to it all. And
Yeah, that's one reason I wonder if why it needs to be 30 days because the season ends and guys are going in the portal the next day. Most of these guys already know what they're going to do. So why does
right.
it need to be a 30-day window? Maybe make it the Monday after the national championship game and let it go till the end of April or something like that. I understand, like you said, even though it's hard to sometimes look at this from an academic perspective because a lot of this it's changed into professional sports with the deals that are being made and everything. But obviously, the timing of it is such that guys have to figure out where they're going to go by summer and enroll in a new school. So that's kind of why the timing of it all is what it is. One reason I wanted to have you on this week was just to talk about your column that you did earlier in the week on Monday over at WDRB.com. I'm going to put a link to that in the show notes for anyone who hasn't had a chance to read it. But you did some research on the two teams that made the national championship game, Gonzaga and Florida, in terms of the transfer portal rankings and also the recruiting rankings, the traditional recruiting rankings. What 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 stood out? What did you find? I guess first for those that haven't read the column, I suggest going to read it. But what did you? What were your takeaways from that, and what did the data tell you about how maybe this tournament was different, and um, maybe how it relates to what we can expect in the future in college basketball?
I guess my primary takeaway is that if you have the right coach and he's a good coach, he's got a good eye for talent and the talent that fits in his system, and he can develop players, you can win. You don't have to have 4 and 5 stars. I think I tweeted out there were more 0-star high school players in the championship game than there were 4-star players. There were 2 0-star recruits, guys who weren't ranked at all, and 1 4-star recruit. And among recruiting classes, neither Houston nor Florida had a top 20 high school class the previous 3 seasons, and only Florida had a top 20, I think it was, portal class, correct?
I think it was 2022. Maybe you mentioned it was.
Yeah, and that was just one player, I think, left from that class, Will Richard, who was like the first recruit that Todd Golden got at Florida. So it's really a hat tip to Kelvin Sampson that he gets guys, he doesn't care where they're ranked. He gets guys that want to play the way he plays and are good at it and coaches them into being, productive players. And I think I also had to take away from it that there were a lot of older players. There were a lot of seniors and juniors that played. The freshmen got beat and looked like freshmen in the last 10 and a half minutes of the game for Duke against Houston. But the main takeaway is, it used to be, especially when Calipari had it rolling in Kentucky and then Coach K, that the 5-star number 1 recruiting class guys were really good. Kentucky had that team in 2015. They didn't win it all, but they had Towns and Booker and Trey Lyles and the Harrison twins and Willie Cauley-Stein and all those dudes. Duke had Okafor and Justice Winslow and Grayson Allen and Tyus Jones. And you can look, through the years, you had to have 4 and 5-star players to win it all. It's not that way anymore. you can get guys who are not or overlooked. And then what Florida especially did was they went and got guys who proved themselves at other schools. I mean, Walter Clayton was a guy that wasn't ranked at all. He was ranked higher as a football player than he was as a basketball player. He didn't want to play football. So he signed with Rick Pitino and played at Iona for 2 years and was really good. When Pitino went to St. John's, he didn't go with him. He wanted to go back home and play for Florida. Will Richards started out at Belmont. That Condon was a decently ranked. I mean, he might have been top 100 player from Australia, right? The Huff guy. Is it Huff or Hawk? I don't know how you pronounce it.
I'm not sure.
He was ranked 220 something from Pennsylvania, and Florida was. He liked Florida because he was a Florida football fan, or he liked the school colors or whatever. And Florida was smart enough to take him, and he's a really good player. So
Elijah Martin's another one, right?
0-star recruit who started at Florida Atlantic, and so it reinforces the narrative that the teams that are not in the Power Five conference have in some way become like the AAA or AA farm teams of the top college basketball programs, and we're going to see that again this year with a lot of guys moving up from those schools and into Power Five schools because of the NIL opportunities that are there.
So do you think we're past the era of like the one and done teams being, I don't want to say dominant in college basketball? We did just see Duke make it to the Final Four and have a chance to win had they not collapsed in the last 10 minutes, but against Houston. But do you think that era now with the portal being what it is? I mean, there's high school kids I know of right now that are, top 100, top 200 recruits in the country right now that haven't committed anywhere. And I think a big reason of that is because right now everyone's so focused on the portal, and these guys may get, left to until late April, early May, and even some of the higher ranked high school kids, you just don't hear as much about them as you do now the top portal guys. I mean, this kid that's going to reportedly visit Indiana, Kentucky, Auburn, and Ole Miss, Lamar Wilkerson, one of the top 3-point shooters in the country. He's getting more buzz right now on social media and the message boards than some of the remaining high school kids on the board. So it kind of speaks to how people have prioritized the portal. I'm just curious, do you think this is a product of the COVID year and guys just being older the last couple of years, or do you think this is a trend that's kind of here to stay, where maybe freshmen are maybe not as prominent in the sport moving forward?
I guess what I think is that for most schools, there are only a couple schools that have shown they can really do the one and done thing, and that was Kentucky with Calipari and Duke, and Shire has done it, beyond the way that Coach K did it. And you're right, if they would have won that game, then none of this we would have been talking about any of this. But I think it's a very small number of coaches or programs that can try and play the one and done game. And somebody might pull it off again. I'm not going to say they won't, but I think it's a much wider path to go the other way, that you can find guys and there's a lot more guys in the portal than there are guys who are good enough to really be dominant players as high school freshmen. And schools are going to back away. I think some coaches are going to back away from recruiting guys that aren't convinced they're going to help them from the very beginning, because they're going to coach them for a year and they're going to get disgruntled by not playing, and they're going to go somewhere else, and the next program is going to take advantage of the work that they put in. So I'd say Duke will keep doing it. Calipari will keep doing it at Arkansas. I don't know. Hurley's got a good class coming in next year, so he might be he's a good enough coach and has enough of an ego that he might think that he can do it. And I'm sure there's going to be somebody else who'll develop him as a coach and have the belief that he can find an efficiency. People are always looking for, what can I do that somebody else can't do? And he'll think that, well, everybody's getting away from the freshmen, I'm going to focus on the freshmen. But I think generally the smartest path is to do it the way that Florida and Houston did it. But you got to be good at identifying players, and you got to be good at developing players. That's where a lot of coaches fall short. And since this is an IU podcast, you can say, what was their portal class ranked last year?
It had to
Top
be top
5?
5. Yeah.
Yeah. And it didn't translate into victories because why? I mean, Ballo pretty much had the season that you thought he would have, but Miles Rice did not. Carlisle did not. Goody probably did, and Langdon Hatton, was inconsequential. So, you know, it worked for Louisville. I mean, Javon Hadley outperformed, I think, what you thought he would. Chucky Hepburn absolutely did. Terrence Edwards did. So um, I think that's the path. I mean, I think that's the safest path is to really you got to have a good staff that says who's going to be available, how much are they going to cost, how are they going to fit together, and the hardest part of it all to me is to evaluate is what are they like as people in a locker room, and how coachable are they in accepting their roles. Because I look at Louisville this year, and Terrence Edwards came here from being he was the most outstanding player in the league at James Madison. It's at the Sun Belt, I think it was. And he accepted not being a guy that got a million shots a game. And you got to have guys that are willing, guys who leave, some percent of them are disgruntled guys, but when they get to their new place, they got to quit being disgruntled and accept here's what my role is, and this is what I'm here to do to play for the team and do that. So you got to have a good feel for the actual what motivates a kid and what his intentions are.
Yeah, the one thing that just popped in my mind, like kind of the flip side of what we've seen with the programs that have had complete overhauls, is what Purdue has been able to do over the last several years. Although this spring we've kind of seen that tested for the first time. They've had some guys leave. I know Cam Heide went to Texas, Miles Colvin went to Wake Forest. Those were guys that you looked at and said, maybe if they stay all 4 years at Purdue, by the time they're junior, senior, they could be an all league player. But maybe a little less patient because of what Braden Smith and Lawyer and Kaufman Wren, those are the guys that kind of run the team. But there's also the model of what Matt Painter's done, which to credit to him, I haven't seen any other school be able to retain it, recruit guys, get them to buy into the long-term development plan. Even redshirt, I mean, Kaufman Wren, he was a guy that picked between Indiana and Purdue, I believe, in the end. He redshirted his first year, and now he's stuck it out there at Purdue, and he's become an all Big Ten type player. So that's kind of the other side. That to me is also a model that can work, but you have to go. Speaking to what you said, you have to be able to have a system that is proven over time that you can develop guys and make them better and show them that when they get to a certain point in their career, they're going to have the role that they want. Otherwise, a guy comes in for 1 year, doesn't play very much, and he's got 10 schools calling him and say, well, you only played, 8 minutes per game. We can get you 25 minutes per game and a little bit more NIL. And then all of a sudden they're in the portal and gone. So to me, that's also been pretty impressive, just being able to watch what Painter's been able to do at Purdue in terms of retaining players and also developing them within the system.
Yeah, I mean, he's another guy that's like he's got a belief system, and he's going to recruit to the belief system, and he's going to not waver from it. He's done transfers strategically. I mean, several of his team usually has one or two guys out of the portal who fill a specific need. You're right; he's gotten a lot of guys to buy in on the development plan, and this year is the first variation from that with Heide, who looked like he was. I mean, he played quite a bit in the NCAA tournament. And I would think he would have a pretty big role next year, but I guess he didn't want to be the
fourth best player, fifth best player.
Yeah, or he wasn't getting enough NIL. He went to Texas, right? So he probably is getting more NIL. And Colvin, I'm sure, thought, I don't want to be a backup another year to Braden Smith and Fletcher Lawyer. So he decided he's going to go to Wake Forest. And Steve Forbes is, he had Hunter Salas the last couple of years. He had that kid from Oklahoma 1 year before that who really did well there. So he's big on portal guards and handing the ball, let them do their thing. But Painter, again, he's got his niche and that's what he stays to. But I don't think everybody can do that.
In terms of going back to Houston and Florida, when you looked at the guys that they got, was there any? Because it's easy to sit here and say, well, they did a great job of getting under the radar guys and developing them. Was there any theme amongst the players that they got in terms of what they looked for, how they put that together, or just kind of when you watch them play? because it's one thing to just collect talent and then think it's all going to fit together, but I think the piece that a lot of coaches probably miss is figuring out in such a short period of time how all the pieces are going to fit together. And I think that's where you have to give Golden and Sampson a ton of credit because um, they obviously got talented players maybe that were a little bit under the radar, but they also figured out a way that they're all going to fit together. And that's I think maybe the toughest thing to do.
For Houston, I think it's physical strength. I mean, he wants guys who are older, mature, and have strong bodies and are willing to really commit to playing defense. I think he filled a need as a shooter when he got Cryer away from Baylor. He became more of his offensive guy, but the rest of them are more defensive oriented players. For Florida, I think Todd Golden likes length. I mean, he had 4 big men that he played and rotated, and they were all pretty long, and they were all very athletic. They weren't the Umar Ballo, Race Thompson kind of big man. They were guys who could really run the court. A couple of them kind of reminded me of Cody Zeller, the way they ran the
Yeah.
court when Zeller was at Indiana and beat the defense down court. And the first option on the offense was to get the ball down to the big man for a dunk. So I think that's their plan. That's what they're looking for. So everybody has their own thing, but it's not 2 bigs in the middle of the lane trying to post up and back their man down and score.
In terms of Indiana, obviously, they've had a couple of transfer portal pickups so far. I think there's some, just judging from the messages I get on the Inside the Hall community, the messages on social media, Facebook comments, etc., emails. I think there's some people who are a little bit impatient right now, just in terms of how things are developing. What have you thought just so far of how the roster's developed so far? Getting Reed Bailey, obviously DeVries' his son, Tucker's coming along, Connor Enright, Trent Sisley, and then potentially Luke Goody. That's what, maybe 5 players so far potentially that could be maybe the core of the team. What just early impressions on what how they've worked the portal and how, I guess, the speed of how things are developing. I mean, I looked at some data last year. A lot of the guys that committed to Indiana, it wasn't until later in April and early May. I think people are maybe panicking a little bit too soon. There's still a lot of time here.
Yeah, I mean, I think it takes time. I think the thing I'd say is some of the guys that you're trying to get have other options, and so they want to probably look around a little bit and not just commit to the first place that offers them. And I think we're seeing some of that play out. So you're going to have to win some recruiting battles. You're going to have some plan Bs and some plan Cs. I think they're probably doing a lot of work that we don't know about. I don't think there's been a lot of media leaks in terms of who they're after, and that's, as a media person, I guess I don't like that. I'm sure fans don't like that, but as a coaching staff, it's to their credit because I think you try and keep it as secretive as you can who you're trying to get, because if you're after them, then other people are going to say, hey, Illinois is after that guy. Why aren't we after him? Or, Kentucky's after that guy. Can we get him? The one thing that's kind of surprised me is that usually, and I'm not going to say usually, but often when coaches change jobs, they bring 1 or 2 players from their previous program with them. And to my knowledge, no West Virginia guys have
DeVries, his son.
But no, well, that's an
Right.
easy recruitment. But none of the other guys, none of the younger players, none of the commits. They had 3 high school commits. None of them
Right.
are also coming. That seems a little interesting to me.
Just from the standpoint of interesting from the standpoint
Well,
of
I guess I always compare it to what I'm most familiar with. And when Kelsey came to Louisville, he brought Rain Smith and James Scott, 2 of his starters, and another guy who redshirted. Pope brought Jackson Robinson from BYU
and
and Colin
Chandler.
Chandler, who was one of his recruits. I mean, I think you see that fairly often. I mean, hasn't 1 or 2 of the Maryland guys followed Kevin Willard to Villanova?
Yeah, yeah. The one thing I would say is a couple of the players that obviously played a ton last year, I think were heavily tied to Chester Frazier, who obviously wasn't going to come to Indiana because of his ties to Illinois. And Um, the high school recruits, I think, to the same, based on what I can see, maybe had some ties to assistant coach that didn't come. So we'll see what happens. I don't think to my knowledge, none of those three have committed elsewhere. So we'll see. I think sometimes with the high school kids, it may take a little bit longer to develop. I'm not sure. I'm not saying that any of them are going to come to Indiana. I agree with you. It's been a little interesting. They also didn't have the deepest or most talented team last year at West Virginia. I mean, I think they did a little bit more with less. I know they had one guy that was a freshman last year that I think transferred down to a lower major school that they maybe took late. So, um, I don't have. I don't have as much of a problem. I don't have any problem with it as long as they're able to fill the roster out and they're able to get guys that fit. I mean, I don't think you just bring someone along just because they were with you at the previous stop. But and clearly they got the best player available that was still had eligibility from West Virginia, bringing in Tucker DeVries. Last thing I wanted to ask you about, just in general, with college basketball, do you think the portal overall has been good for the sport, or do you think it's been a negative? Kind of a loaded question, but we'll leave it on that.
I mean, I think overall it's been good. I don't like it, but I'll admit it's because of my age, and I came up in an era when it wasn't like that, and I liked it. And I hear from more fans who are of my age of one of the things they enjoyed about college basketball was watching a player come in, playing as a freshman, getting a little bit better, and then playing as a sophomore and getting even better, and then playing as a junior and being really good. And now it's like you don't see that very much anymore. And every year is a different roster and it's a different face. And uh, in the previous eras, guys would play at a school for 3 or 4 years and be associated with the program, and then maybe come back and be around the program or be a part of the program or whatever. And now it's like they're there for 7 months and they're gone on to the next one. There's so many guys that are playing at 4 schools. And I know the arguments and I don't disagree with them about coaches can change jobs and regular college students can change jobs and they deserve to get paid because all the money that's in there. But um, having lived through the previous, I mean, I'm old enough to remember when Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was Lou Alcindor and couldn't play as a freshman at UCLA, and his life turned out okay. Same for Bill Walton. It just seems it's so frenetic now that it's really harder to follow the game. You try and I laugh like people post those stories the day after the national championship game of a really early top 25 for next year. I mean, you don't even know 20% of the players who are going to be on the team. I mean, how can you possibly project who's going to be good and who's not going to be good? It's foolish. Where in the old days, I mean, I can remember in 2012 when I was at the Final Four that somebody told me that USA Today was going to have the story the next day that IU was going to be preseason #1 for 2013, and that makes sense because Zeller and Oladipo and Hulls and Watford and all those guys are going to be back. Now it doesn't make any sense. So I'm not the guy that says the rules shouldn't have changed. This is wrong. I get it. It's the way it is. I accept it, but I do have a longing for the way that it used to be because there just was more. I don't know. It just seemed like you could follow. I'm Purvis Ellison was the MVP of the 1986 Final Four as a freshman. He stayed at Louisville for 4 years. And as a media person, you've covered him and you got to know him. At IU, Quinn Buckner was a freshman starting point guard on a team from a four and stayed to his last year and was the captain of an undefeated team. At Kentucky, I can think of guys Sam Bowie, or Kenny Walker, the guys that I would get to know. And you watched them go from good to really good to great. And you don't see that anymore now. It's so transactional. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's
I mean, even a recent example of an Indiana player. I mean, Trace Jackson Davis. Think about how
yeah,
we might have seen a player like we won't probably
never.
won't see another player like that. And that was just he's just what 2 years out of college,
Any records that he set will never be touched. Like all the career scoring records, I mean, no one's going to break Cheney's record, and it's not going to happen.
right?
So, it's just a different world. And is it better? In some ways, it's better. In some ways, I don't think it's better. And uh, the interest in the tournament this year from the TV ratings seemed to say that people like the tournament still.
Yeah.
Um, I guess crowds will probably be up next year at IU. They were definitely up at Louisville this year because they were winning. So winning is what matters in the end. But I think there's some fans who've been around for a long time who probably long for the days that it used to be somebody would come to a place and stay for 4 years, and it's not going to be that way. You have to accept it.
Yeah, I mean, you could see some more guys like an Anthony Leal or a Galloway. I think situations like that, homegrown players from Indiana or any, for any other program
Yeah, I
around the
mean,
country. I
Braden
think you can.
Smith's going to do it, and
Right,
Coffin
right,
Wren's going to do it, but they're the
right,
exception.
right. No, and I mean, and those are the guys that are going to be appreciated long term, right? In those programs because they're going to be remembered for they were in this era of player movement and they stayed and they won, and that's another key I think to all of this is if you win enough, you have a chance probably to keep guys, right? For if they're not an NBA player, you have a chance to keep guys for the long term. If you're
Yeah,
not winning enough, then you're going to see movement. And the other thing I think just for general interest in the sport, I think it's with the NBA in July, right when free agency starts. I mean, it's the lead on everything. It's the big story. NFL free agency. I think it has given a bit of a boost to the year round coverage of college basketball. That the portal right now, if there's a big portal commit, it's going to be one of the top headlines on
right.
ESPN.com. That wasn't going to in the past if a guy had to transfer and sit out and we weren't going to see him play for a couple of years at his new place, that it wasn't a big deal. So I think from that standpoint, it's kind of helped. I just agree with you from the chaos perspective. I hope that at some point they're able to arrive at a system where there's a little bit more stability in terms of player movement. I don't have a problem with guys transferring. Maybe it can be a one-time transfer with no exceptions. But this idea, I mean, isn't Trey White that started at USC? Isn't he going to be at his fourth school in 4 years? And I think there's been one coaching change in that, so it's not like it's been coaching. He started at USC, went to Louisville, Illinois, and now Kansas.
Right. He's not the only one. There's plenty of those
Oh,
guys.
there's plenty
What's the
of them,
guy
but
that was the point guard at? He was at Arizona, then he went to West Virginia, and then Kentucky. Now he's going to Cincinnati. Kerr Kriisa, is that his name?
Yeah,
Yeah, he's
yeah.
another 4 school guy. So there's going to be a bunch of them. It's gonna happen. It's going to continue to happen. And people talk about. I mean, coaches don't jump 4 times. Four
No,
times. They
no.
jump once. They might jump twice, but once more likely. Underwood did jump.
But Buzz Williams every 6 years, right?
Underwood did it. I mean, he went from what's Stephen F. Austin or whatever
Hmm.
to Illinois. I mean, to Oklahoma State to Illinois, but they don't jump every year. But it's
Right.
not gonna change. I mean, players are going to be able to do that. The NCAA is going to be afraid to try to enforce any rules because they'll get sued if they try and stop them.
I mean, I think the only thing they could do is maybe introduce if contracts come into the sport, signing players to multi-year deals. I think that's the only way you stop it. I mean, you say you sign a freshman, say this is an NIL deal for our revenue share deal for 2 years. You have to commit to the 2 years or the 3 years, and then it would be up to the players to decide if they want to sign it. Right? You get the stability, but then do you want to bet on yourself and say after 1 year I'm going to be able to maybe go get somewhere else, or do you want to take the guarantee of the deal of what I can get up front? So that I think that'll be the next frontier in all of this, but it's an ever-changing landscape. Really enjoyed your column at WDRB. I thought it was really well done, and I know a lot of IU fans read it and gave it, you know, a lot of thought because of last season and what happened with the portal. And I think people are excited about a little bit maybe more analytic-driven, more savvy approach to the portal this season. Might not see Indiana ranked at the same level in terms of the portal rankings, but who knows? Could get a team that's better
Well,
constructed.
that's what was missing at Indiana. These guys were Valo and Rice and Carlisle were highly ranked in the portal, but there wasn't any forethought into how are they going to fit together, how are they
Right.
going to play together, and how are they going to be developed. I mean, Ballo, like I said, I think played about how you thought he would be. He played the way about how I thought he would be, but Miles Rice probably thought this isn't how I was used to playing at Washington State. He's a better player than he played for IU last year.
For sure.
And Carlisle, he was vastly overrated. Maybe he just had an off year, but I didn't really see. He wasn't a very good shooter. He wasn't a great ball handler. He's a decent defender, but if he was ranked in the top, was he the top 20 of the portal guys?
He was pretty high. The other thing that really
I don't see it.
the other thing that really torpedoed the season was that it took forever for Woodson to figure out that, he had a guy on the bench and Anthony Leal that if he would have just played him more from the start, I think the record would have been a lot different in the end. But he was too married to this idea of playing the two big lineup and playing the guys
Playing
that
the
got out of
guys
the
that were getting
portal.
the most money too. I mean, I think
Right.
there's some of that implicit in this. If you go in the portal and get some of the top players, you're paying them a decent amount of money. And A, you're probably thinking, if I'm paying them, I need to play them. And B, the agents are probably saying, hey, wait a minute, how come my guy isn't playing more?
Right.
If you want to send more players to you in the future, you tell me he's going to play, and now he's sitting the bench. I'm not sure I'm going to send more guys your way. We don't
I mean,
know.
it was no coincidence that he played Bryson Tucker all the way up to the UCLA game, and then didn't play him at all after that. And then that's when they obviously, started winning some more games. But at that point, he was desperate to try to make the tournament. So he knew he was gone. So he basically said, I'm just going to play the guys that give me the best chance to win, which I think that's how you have to coach from the start of the season. And now I want to make this about Woodson, but I'm just saying in this whole new era of portal acquisitions, that needs to be a conversation that happens on the front end with the player and say, we're going to pay you this amount of money. We're happy to do that. We want you to be a part of our program, but we're not promising you that you're going to play 35 minutes a game. You're going to have to earn your minutes. And that's how it has to be, because I think that's, among the many things that were mismanaged last season. I think that was even the Luke Goody thing. I mean, there was times where he was playing Mbako more than Goody, and it was clear certain situations that shouldn't have been the case. And the two bit, all those guys, it was basically playing the highest valued NIL guys as much early in the season, and then once they figured out later on in the season that he was going to be gone, he just played the guys that helped him win the most. I think that's how you have to do it from the get go. Whether it's the guy that's getting 1.5 million or the guy that's getting 300,000, play the guy out. Play the guy that's going to help you win the game.
My hope is that one day some bright young student at the IU Kelly School will do his thesis on how Mike Woodson mismanaged the Indiana basketball program. It would be a bestseller.
Yeah. We could probably do a 5-hour podcast and still have plenty of things to talk about, but
yes,
we will leave it at that. We're hopeful for better days ahead for Indiana basketball as Darren DeVries and the coaching staff kind of work the portal in a stealth-like manner, which not a lot of leaks. I think is a good thing. Like you said, could maybe drive up the price for certain guys if all of a sudden word gets out that you're working on a certain guy. So hopefully things continue to operate in this way, and we'll see some movement here in the next couple weeks with the roster. Thank you again for coming on this episode of Podcast on the Brink. If you haven't read the column, again, I'm going to put it down in the show notes. It's at WDRB.com. Just click on sports, and I think Bozich and Crawford, and scroll down a little bit, and it should be down there. Pretty good analysis there of what happened with Gonzaga and Florida. For those who enjoy the show, Podcast on the Brink, please leave us a rating and a review over on Apple Podcasts. Leave us a 5-star rating over on Spotify, and we'll be back soon with another episode of Podcast on the Brink.